This is the reason why we have to get cameras in the courtroom. This is the poster, the digital poster or the printed poster that I put out in July of 2021. And what I want to focus on here is, these are a bunch of Supreme Court cases that if you know them, it'll help you a whole bunch in understanding how the Supreme Court works. That's one thing. This is the lynching graph here, and then here's the United States, and then your Fourth Amendment is down here. The Fourth Amendment is the right of the people to be secure in their person, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. And no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. This line right here, this white line that starts back here, this is the prison population graph. And if you take a look at the prison population graph, right there, that spike right here, this is over prohibition right here. That's what you're looking at right there. See if I can grab a pen so I can pop my pin in here. This right here, the reason why we have a prison industrial complex, just so you know, is because this aligns with Prohibition 1920, 1933. This is the first building of prohibition of the prison industrial complex. And we're going to go from roughly 40,000 people in prison to 200,000 people in prison by the time Prohibition ends. And then it's going to keep going right here. And what's this giant spike right here? You guessed it. Come all the way up. It's Terry versus Ohio. Like I always talk about Terry. These Supreme Court cases you should definitely know. But let's talk about something important. From 1968 and the war on drugs with Nixon in 71, you create this massive prison system that goes up 100,000. Each one of these thin lines is 100,000 people. So what's the big problem we have here? Is that there's no audio and there's no video in the courtroom. If you're getting such a fair deal in court, then how come our prison system has taken off like this since 1968? Right there. Well, we know that 71 is the war on drugs, but Terry versus Ohio that allows cops to run up and just put their hands on you and grab you, that's the real problem. It puts officer safety over your rights, and that's why cops can grab you. Now, you have a bunch of information on here, like the 1970 Substance Control Act, which is pretty much going to be completely written by one man. It's going to be written by this guy right here, Frenchie. Frenchie is going to be Reagan's Secretary of State, and this guy's going to write all the laws that are going to uphold the 1970 Controlled Substance Act, including a civil asset forfeiture that's going to be led by Joe Biden when he's in the Senate. And so you get the 94 crime bill that's going to capitalize on the 1970 Substance Control Act, and then cops can run up and grab you if they're suspicious of you. Well, half of our country has some kind of chemical that they do, from coffee to heroin and everything in between, from marijuana to alcohol, you name it. And so the reason why I put the Secretaries of State on this particular graphic is because I wanted people to realize that it's not the president necessarily all the time who does it. It's also the Secretary of the State, like Frenchie. But this, just so you know, the 1970 Substance Control Act, this was written by a guy named John Mitchell. John Mitchell's right there. John Mitchell's underneath of the timeline. You can barely see his face. But John Mitchell was the Secretary of State for Richard Nixon, the Attorney General. I'm sorry, not the Secretary of State, the Attorney General. This guy's an Attorney General as well. John Ashcroft's an Attorney General. You guys know who these guys' Attorney Generals are. Barr, Sessions, all these guys, and these two guys are cops. But I'm showing you guys something, Roberto Gonzalez right here. I'm showing you something important here. When Nixon creates the war on drugs, in 1970, John Mitchell writes the 1970 Controlled Substance Act on his own. He sits down and writes it by himself with a couple of paralegals. And the 1970 Controlled Substance Act is the entire basis for the 1971 war on drugs. So now cops can run up and grab you in 1968 because Terry versus Ohio. They can jerk you out of the car from the 1977 case of Pennsylvania versus Mim. The 76 case of South Dakota versus Opperman says they can impound your car if they're suspicious or they need to inventory your car. So you don't have a chance when you get in your car. And this goes back to the 1925 case of Carroll versus the United States. If you know all the cases on this graphic, if you know all of them, if you know what the model penal code was and why it was written from 1952 to 1962, it's going to be written by a guy named Wexler and a guy named Harry Blackman. I don't think I have him pictured on here. But the point is when we can't get our cameras in the courtroom, when you can't get your audio video in the courtroom, this is the outstanding result. You have all of these millions of people living in a dungeon. Everything the government does is to put you in a dungeon. There's very few remedies for anything that they consider a crime against you. You will be put into a dungeon. And nothing hurts us more today than the 1994 crime bill. But the 94 crime bill works in conjunction with the 1970 Controlled Substance Act, which works in the conjunction with the 1971 war on drugs, which then Frenchie and Reagan are going to create civil asset forfeiture, and that's going to go through the legislature, but that's going to be pushed through by Joe Biden. Joe Biden creates that, and then Bill Clinton signs the 1994 crime bill, which includes the COPS program and Operation Relentless Pursuit. And just so you know, the 94 crime bill, it's just an extension of the 1968 omnibus crime bill, where they introduced gun control. Now, gun control still goes all the way back to the 1911 Sullivan Act, which is going to be right over, where is it? So sorry, I'm a little lost here. I'm trying to find it. The 1911 Sullivan Act right there. So the 1911 Sullivan Act is what is where the 1968 gun control legislation comes from. You have that 1968 omnibus crime bill, but that's created from the 1911 Sullivan Act. People don't know that the 1911 Sullivan Act is still the legislation in most states today. Now, there's some states that are doing constitutional carry and things like that, but you shouldn't have to get a gun permit or a gun license or anything else. All of these different things are working together. I just want to go back to it, though. Unless we have audio video in the courtroom, then they're altering the record. You're not getting the record. You can't audio record your hearing. Why? Who are they protecting from your audio recording? They're protecting the judges and the DAs and the prosecutors. They're protecting the probation officers who are going to lie in court and the cops who are going to lie on the stand. If you have an audio recording of it in court and you have a video of it on the street, then you can prove that the cop was lying. And so when you can't record in the courtroom, this is the result of not having transparency in the courtroom. You can record the cops on the street, but it doesn't matter, because if you can't record the court, then the judges are going to cheat you. If you think that this is Americans are getting a fair deal in court, just look at this prison graph right here. Just look at it. You think people got worse? Or they created legislation and they created it so they could make you a criminal. They created these things to make you a criminal. I mean, and then when you read the police commissions, including the 1929 Seabury Commission, the 1931 Wickersham Commission, the 1972 Knapp Commission, the 1994 Mullen Commission, you find out that cops are scum. That William Bratton and Chief of Police Michael Moore in Los Angeles, these guys are scum. They're scum. They're bad people. They're not good people. And so when you have all of these bills created to make us a criminal, the 1968 Omnibus Crime Bill, everything's a crime. And look what happens to our prison system. Look what happens. It's insane. If you don't know Wilson versus Arkansas, why they can raid your home and kill you in your home, it's because of the 1995 case of Wilson versus Arkansas. And this 1985 case where Harry Blackman is going to reverse himself. He's going to reverse himself is what he's going to do. And he's going to say you can't shoot people when they run away unless it's in the name of officer safety. You have to know all these cases. You have to know all of them. You have to know that Matt versus Ohio is essentially going to be overruled with the 63 case of Kerr versus California. You have to know what the correlation is between Matt versus Ohio and Kerr versus California. You have to know these things. All right. This is our prison system today. You think you're getting a fair shake in court? You think you're getting a fair shake? Does that look like you're getting a fair shake in court to you? Is that what that looks like? It doesn't look like that to me. All right, guys. I hope you have a great day. You can get this poster on my website, DeleteLawZ. I have a hard copy available. You can get the downloadable one and go print it out at Kinko's or Office Max, and it's fairly inexpensive. Okay, guys. Thanks for your time. God bless you guys. And remember one thing. We don't stop. Later, Gator.